Start hearing presentations from the Humboldt County Office of Elections, and then we will be hearing from the local Democratic, Republican, Green, and Libertarian parties. But before we begin, there are several things I'd like to say. First and foremost, I want to express my sincere thanks to everyone who was involved in making this event become a reality. Thank you to Genevieve Serna, Juan Pablo Cervantes from the County Elections Office. Thank you to Mario Fernandez, Susan Moxon, David Cobb, Richard Stafford, and everyone else who is associated with the political party for being here. Excuse me. Thank you to Joyce Chang, J.D. Garza, Peggy Stewart, John Meyer, Stephanie Burkhalter, Nicola Walters, Jared Larson, Noah Zerby, and Tani Sebro, and everyone else from the politics department for your support and assistance with making this event become a reality. Thank you to Wayne Cockerham, Amanda Boyema, Lana Nijoni Murillo, and from the Politics Club for your assistance and participation in this event. And lastly, I'd like to thank my amazing partner, Lorelei, for being here today. I know it's taking time out of your day. 2, for being a cool person, and 3, for driving me around since my car broke down the other day. And moving on, as a member of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union at Local 5, I would like to express my support and solidarity with the California Faculty Association in their negotiations with the CSU. The educators here at Cal Poly Humboldt and across the CSU system are criminally underpaid and underappreciated by those at the top who directly profit off of their hard work. The CSU has made it incredibly clear that they would rather run their institutions like a private business rather than the public educational institutions that they are. The faculty here at Cal Poly Humboldt deserve a better contract, and I will fully support the CFA's decision to call a strike should the CSU prove unwilling to bargain. In the end of the strike, I will not be crossing that picket line, and I implore the rest of you to not cross it either. I would also like to take a moment to condemn the administration's reprehensible decision to evict our houseless student population from the parking lots here on campus. To President Jackson, how do you sleep at night? How dare you try and displace our most vulnerable student population who has made the incredibly difficult decision to forego housing so that they can afford to go to school in the hopes of escaping the cycle of poverty. We are talking about the people who pay your staggering $347,000 a year salary, and you want to force them from the relative safety of campus into the streets where they can become victims of Arcata PD harassment and further exacerbate the already bad housing crisis here in Humboldt. You claim that our parking lots are unsafe and unsanitary because of these students. I have never once felt unsafe in these parking lots, and I have never once felt that they are unsanitary. The language you are using in regards to these students is classist, discriminatory, humiliating, and quite frankly, it's evil. So, I'm sorry, President Jackson and the rest of the administration, that you are so out of touch with the realities of life that you find people living their lives to the best of their abilities unsightly. Time and time again, the administration of the school has made me embarrassed to be a student here at Cal Poly Humboldt. I'm sure many of the students here have received the administration's email yesterday. Yet again, the school has made such an unpopular decision that they have had to offer minor concessions without actually compromising on anything meaningful. Great, you are offering free housing for the duration of the semester to these students, but without any protections for the spring semester and without the ability to safely keep their cars parked on campus, many of these students who cannot afford both tuition and housing will have no choice but to drop out. These concessions are not enough, and I encourage everyone to attend the protest in the G11 parking lot. Last I heard, I'm not sure if this protest is still ongoing, but it was going on earlier today. And to the administration, you like to pretend that this school is some progressive and inclusive, welcoming space. Why do you not act like it then? On that positive note, thank you again for coming out to this event, everyone. I've been working on this project for 3 months, and I'm very excited for you all to see what's in store. And once again, after presentations here, we will be moving to the Green and Gold Room, Founders Hall 166. I think most of us have already been in there today, where you will have a chance to talk directly with party representatives, as well as the Office of Elections and the Politics Club. And once again, I would like to say thank you to the Politics Department. My frustration with the school is with the administration. Politics Department has been nothing but helpful with this event. So once again, thank you. And I'm going to now pass the floor over to the County Office of Elections.
Thanks to our voters for the County of Humboldt. That means I do a couple of things. I maintain all of your important life events and the documents that are associated with them. When you buy a house, have a child, when somebody passes away, all those vital documents are housed in my office, and we maintain them for you all. The other thing, which is what brings me here, is that I'm the Registrar of Voters for the County of Humboldt. That means I do everything that has to do with elections in Humboldt County by me and my staff, really. Everything from special districts like community service districts, fire protection districts, school districts, all the way through our congressional races that occur here at the county level. Our office manages and executes those elections. And I'm here to talk to you all about the Voters' Choice Act. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I think started at like 12 or 13 slides, and I think we've got it pared down to 3. So it's not going to be too PowerPoint intensive. I found over the course of giving this presentation that people have more questions than they are interested in getting some of the drier facts that we have associated with the Voters' Choice Act. We have an election administration plan that we put together that goes into really fine detail how we're going to execute this new model of voting. And so that'll be a good reference point. But I'm going to keep this short so that there's plenty of opportunity for questions, because that's what we tend to run out of when it comes to time. So in Humboldt County in California, we have 2 primary models for how an election's run. We have your traditional polling place model. That's kind of what everyone's familiar with, a little curveball thrown in there during the previous pandemic. That's your neighborhood polling place. There's many throughout the county. They're based in neighborhoods. Historically, they happen in people's garages for many reasons. We haven't done that for a very long time. And they're staffed by volunteer poll workers. These are people that have graciously, and I see some of you all here, some of you that have been poll workers for many times, that have graciously given their time in order to make democracy happen in the county. That tends to look like in our county, like 50 to 60 polling places throughout the county. Those polling places need to meet ADA standards, the Americans with Disability Act. And so those standards get updated between every election cycle. That means that contrary to when a building gets built, it needs to meet ADA standards for the time. Our polling places get retested every election cycle. And so over the years, the number of places that have been made available to us, they decrease exponentially. In the past elections, we had the exact number we needed in order to remain legally compliant with the distribution of those polling places. In this traditional polling place model, you get assigned a polling place, so you have to vote in your neighborhood polling place. If you work in Eureka but happen to live in Hoopa, and you can't get away from work to go back and vote at the right time, you can't just show up to a Eureka polling place and vote. Then we'll direct you right back to Hoopa. If you're able to vote provisionally, which you'll be given that option, you'll be voting a limited ballot, so you won't be able to vote on all of the things that are pertaining to you because of the limitations tied to this traditional polling place model. This is a thing that's unfair across the whole county. One might think of that model as being regressive towards people that just live in rural areas, but it impacts people in Eureka as well. Some of the limitations tied to that traditional polling place model is that we have precincts set up. We could only assign so many precincts to a polling place, and those precincts could only be a certain size. And so what that means in practice is that we end up with pockets of our population that are in what's called a mail ballot precinct. These are voters that don't get assigned an in-person polling place. They have to either come into our office in Eureka or vote by mail. That drastically limits their options compared to other voters. We see that really prominently in southern Humboldt, where coming up to Eureka is not just a 15-minute car ride, it's a meaningful impact to their ability to be enfranchised. And so those are some of the problems and the groundwork that we've had leading up to our decision to adopt the Voters' Choice Act. The Voters' Choice Act is something that was passed, I believe, in 2016, and we've been trying to adopt it ever since because of that. Because being a rural county with limited facilities, we kind of saw the writing on the wall when it came to our need to do something different. Under the Voters' Choice Act, we have a slightly different voting model. We'll have fewer places, but they'll be open longer, and anyone can go to any of them while they're open. And so we'll have, let me see if I've got that map on there. All right, I'll get to that. So under the Voters' Choice Act, you have a couple of different options. Every county actively registered voter will receive a vote by mail ballot. That used to be a difference between the Voters' Choice Act and traditional polling place. The pandemic made it so that's no longer the main difference, that it's the same in both situations. We'll have ballot drop boxes spread out throughout the county, and then we'll have vote centers. We'll have 2 vote centers that are going to be open 11 days. Anybody can go to any of them while they're open. We'll have 7 that are going to be open for 4 days, and 3 that are going to be open for 1 day. The law requires a lot less than that for us, but we're Humboldt County, and we really care about, you know, democracy, and so we go a little beyond. These are the locations we'll have. We'll have a couple of I'll go in reverse order. The 1 days are going to be in Hoopa, Garberville, and Ferndale. We felt the need to really have geography be a factor in how we set these out, not just population density. Again, we're a rural county, and we felt that was critical for us in order to set up a situation that was most fair. And then we'll have the 7 places between McKinleyville and Ferndale. The 2 11 days that we'll have are going to be in Fortuna and Arcata. Fortuna and Arcata. And here are some of those dates that'll be pertinent leading up to the election. Some of these dates will be the same, like the vote by mail postmark date is going to be the same regardless of the model. But it's when we start deploying these locations that you see the big difference. At any of these locations, they're basically going to be satellite offices. We are not going to have volunteers stationed at these places. They're going to be county employees that have a full amount of training. Historically, our poll workers had to endure a grueling, what felt like 4 or 5 hour PowerPoint presentation, and then a couple of hours of machine training, and then we set them off with a book that was maybe, was it that big, Susan? It was pretty big. And then so we compacted this really complex, you know, day of voting that basically everything hinges on. You can't take back an election. It happens, and so you have to do it right the first time into this really short amount of time. And that was the nature of asking for people's time voluntarily, is that when we're unable to compensate for their time, then we're really limited in how much we can ask of them. Under this new polling place model, or this new vote center model, they'll be full-time, or they'll be employees, and so we'll be able to pay them an hourly wage. Currently, we have training scheduled to 16 hours. So going from like 5 to 6 hours to 16, you're already going to see a dramatic increase in what they're going to be able to be capable of doing at these vote centers. You'll be able to be assisted in different languages. We'll be able to square away your registration if there's something going on with it. You'll be able to register to vote at these places, as well as voting. And all of this will be able to happen at any of these places across the county. Historically, in order to do any of those additional things, you would have had to come into our office in Eureka. And so we have, for language opportunities, we have call line that we're able to access and get translation services in many, many languages. We'll get back to that. And so those are the primary differences when it comes to the Voters' Choice Act and what you're familiar with, which is that traditional polling place model. The idea is that we'll have more ways and more days for folks to get involved. We see this as a matter of personal responsibility. We take that pretty seriously in our audits. We don't feel like the onus is just on the voter, but it's on us and our staff in order to make sure that we get rid of any kind of barriers that impact people's ability to vote, whether they're geographic or chronologic in nature. And so this is the big shift that we're doing. In order to do that, and to do that as successfully as possible, we need people. We need folks willing to get hired on and participate in probably one of the biggest elections this country's ever seen. We expect really high voter turnout in 2024. March is that first step of the way. In March, we're going to have a party primary, so there's going to be all kinds of incentives for participation. I think part of why we're here is that we're wanting people to participate in that democratic process, whether that's through any of the parties that are here today or just voting. But any way that we can get you excited and thinking about participating, get you connected to people that are like-minded or differently minded in order for you to kind of expand that view, the more likely we are to get you invested in voting. One of the other ways to get folks invested in voting is to work an election. Those of you that have worked it, I'm sure you see the drastic difference in how you view democracy after having participated in upholding it. We have strong data to show that, for example, high school kids that serve as poll workers, we could take folks younger than 18 to serve at the polls, become lifelong voters. I don't have any data at the moment on folks older than high school, but I wouldn't be surprised if seeing that same correlation happen as folks get older. Seeing how everything is happening, seeing the checks and balances, having a stake in what is going on gets you to be pretty involved. And so we encourage you to, if you have the time around March or November, to reach out and sign up to be a vote center worker. And now, do you have any questions about the Voters' Choice Act or about anything election oriented? When I'm out in the community, I get questioned a lot about, vote by mail, how we do signature checking, anything at all that you have a question or concern about. Now's the time to talk to an election nerd. Joe?
So, if I live in Ferndale and I go to a vote center in Eureka, you'll be able to print me a Ferndale ballot at that vote center?
Absolutely. We'll be able to get you your exact ballot regardless of which vote center you go.
So no more provisional voting?
We'll have some provisional voting, but it'll be far rarer. So the provisional voting, provisional ballot, there's a thing called the provisional conditional. I'm not going to get into the nuances of that because that gets legalistic. But essentially a provisional vote is a mechanism that we protect voters where we in our office can't confirm certain things about them. We can't necessarily confirm where they live. We can't confirm if they're legally allowed to vote or not, and we can't confirm with absolute certainty that they voted or not. And so the provisional ballot is this way of preserving a voter's right to vote. And so we give them the opportunity to vote, and it gives us the opportunity to investigate to make sure that that ballot should be counted. And so we process those after the fact. As Joe knows, it's a lot of paperwork to get those processed, and it slows things down a bit. So this should reduce some of that. And having everything interconnected in the way that we'll be able to do, a lot of those questions will go away pretty instantly, but we'll still have occasions where we're not certain. And in those situations, we'll use provisional ballots in order to kind of secure both parts of that process. Yes?
When you go through the hiring process to hire the election workers, what makes someone eligible versus ineligible? Like what's your criteria for hiring?
So it'll be general county employment eligibility with a couple of caveats. We have legal requirements tied to citizenship, residence, and age that we're having to factor in, but those are mainly it. For the most part, most folks that are 18 and over, 16, 17 and over are able to serve at the polls. Yes?
Will the public be offered like a list of these people? Is there transparency within that hiring process to kind of see, because obviously ballot transporter would be a very important position. Someone might want to know who that is.
Absolutely. So for the ballot transport, some of this will be county employees, so subject to similar California Public Record Act requests. So we'll have that information available in case we need to get audited, or if there's a record request that compels us to share that information. Some of this gets to a point where we want to be accountable, but at the same time we want to protect people's, not necessarily their privacy, but their security. And so we'll have some of that information available as the law kind of has us do. And that's for ballot transporters. For vote center staff, we're required by law to print or to give public notice of the parties of the folks that we have working at different polling places. And so we won't give names, but we'll list out. We have, 2 Republicans, a Libertarian, and a Green Party person working at, the Eureka for the Memorial, and so on and so forth. So we have some requirements there. For the ballot transporting, we understand it's absolutely critical. We have checks and balances along the way. We maintain a really strict chain of custody. And so we have the people that need to be at certain places at certain times. We have a seal system so that they're tamper-proof seals. So along the way, those seals get checked and make sure that nothing gets tampered with along their route. And then those ballots have 2 people assigned to them at all parts of their journey back into our office. Any other questions? Yes?
How are the drop boxes monitored?
So currently we have drop boxes set up in private businesses who we have agreements with, and so they're always in a place where it's visible to their staff. And we've been limited in how many drop boxes we can deploy because of that, because we're being really conscious about being able to place them in a place that is observed and open the hours that we need them to be open. Ideally, I'd like to eventually expand that by including cameras and other security measures, but the budgeting situation in the county hasn't given me that ability yet. But at the moment, they're seen by staff, either at Ace Hardware, as Murphy's. They keep it on animals for us.
So they're only available when those businesses are open?
That's correct, and they're secured otherwise. The only drop box that's an exception to that is the drop box at our facility, and that one's significantly more secured. It gets shut every night and then opened back up in order to make sure that everything is tamper-proof and secure.
So the other locations, the ballot box isn't locked at night?
Um,
Or left, it's left open?
It's not, you can't pull anything out of it. It's set up in that way.
We should put something on.
Yeah, but, I mean, we check signatures and everything, so that wouldn't be as much of an issue. We were worried about the Dropbox in front of our office because we had threats made tied to those Dropboxes, and we wanted to make sure that nobody could put non-ballots and non-paper things in there. And so that's why we seal those up. We only keep them open when we have somebody available to kind of monitor it. And if you've been to our office, that Dropbox is right in front of the double doors where our administrative analysts are seated. So Genevieve, keeping watch over those ballots. Any other questions? Yes?
At what point do you qualify or not qualify for a ballot? A provisional ballot, I guess, is what I'm talking about.
It'll be something, so if you show up in person and we're not able to verify if you voted or not, and we have a mechanism by which we check with our partners in other counties.
Or if you don't have ID, or
So ID in California, we're not required to ask except for one situation. And that situation is the first time that you're voting at a federal election, we're required to ask for ID, and so we check ID at that junction in time. Yes?
Would you check ID for same-day voters that are registering the same day?
It depends on, so when we process them, we'll know if their ID has been confirmed along the way or not.
Along the way of their voting history, is that what you mean?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we'll be able to check that, and if there's any uncertainty, you know, we will address that at that point, either through a provisional ballot or by checking ID. But there shouldn't be a situation like that.
And that data is obviously showing who's same-day registration.
We report that up to the Secretary of State's office, and I think they compile that data and offer it to folks to peruse. Yeah, we have a thing called ROR in our world, the report of registration. Happens at different junctions in time, and so it's data we report up to the Secretary of State's office, and they send us a little book that compiles that. Yeah.
Just a brief introduction of myself. My name is Mario Fernandez. I'm the chair of the local Democratic Party here in Humboldt, the Humboldt County Democratic Central Committee. Brief bit about myself. I'm a union organizer, community organizer. I'm a registered Democrat by the way of Bernie Sanders, who he himself describes as a democratic socialist or a social democrat. I see myself more as a social libertarian, which is a branch of anarchism. For those of you unfamiliar, it might sound familiar to you, especially if you're in political science. But my background is largely in political science and psychology. I created my degree at San Francisco State University in political psychology. So I tend to want to have those relationships and that empathy with people, especially our constituents, our residents, our voters. And so when I talk about, or rather when we talk about the Democratic Party here in Humboldt, I understand we have the highest registration. That doesn't mean that we're the best party, that just means we're the most prevalent. There's definitely room for improvement in our party too. To that effect, we did come up with some platform stakes last year. They've been difficult to implement because this is all coming from the idea of like, this is what we want to see, these are big pictures ideas. How do we implement these locally? And so for me it's difficult because I want to take that organizer aspect and say what we get out to the communities. Well, it's difficult to run as you're coming out of a pandemic and trying to get out there and socialize with folks. So at least moving forward, these are the things that I would want us to tackle in a more humanistic approach, in a more community-driven approach. I think it was just said by our county registrar clerk, your whole title there. I'm sorry, it's so much to remember, man. But getting out there at these functions, whether it's the North County Fair or the county fair itself, and having these relationships, building people, getting them excited about our platform. And that being said, one of the reasons we didn't participate in the county fair this year was just because of the administrative hurdles and some of the costs associated with it. I'm sure you know how expensive it can be. But again, also just coming out of the pandemic and getting people to just kind of get re-engaged with politics. I genuinely think people are burnt out at this point. And so we have to get out there, we have to have that empathy, we have to sit down, we have to have these tough conversations. It was alluded to that, yeah, our platforms are going to be different, but I think that there is quite a bit of overlap there that we can relate to one another. When it comes to bodily autonomy, absolutely, that's something first and foremost that's right here at the top of the list that came out right next to healthcare for all. So for us here locally, especially with the decision from the Supreme Court last year, that's something that we want to make sure that we enshrine here in California and that we protect here locally. Right next to that, we have mental health access. That's something, again, that we want to enshrine here in California. That's something that we need to have here locally. I think we've all encountered that in one way or another. Police reform. Again, we would like to see review boards. We would like law enforcement to go through the same methods that we see other city and municipal workers go through. If something has happened that needs to be questioned, then there should be a review of it. That happens of pretty much any other municipal employee. Recently, City of Eureka, of which I'm a city council member of, we deprioritized natural psychedelics. We saw that as being important because we're asking them to reallocate their funds. That's what that whole defund movement has been about, at least from my perspective. I myself am a proponent of defund the police to the respect that we need to reallocate those funds to other programs, to other situations. That's something that we've written about, something that we've written a resolution about from the Democratic Party going back to, I think, 2020, after the George Floyd murder. So not only do we support Black Lives Matter, but we support the reallocation of funds from law enforcement to other aspects, particularly around mental health, things that keep people safe and engaged in their community. Political reform as it comes to participatory budgeting. We've seen it here in Arcata with our city, or with the city council. We've seen it in Eureka. Something we'd like to grow, something that we'd like to see more of. Cannabis tax reform. I know that there's something on the ballot for the county at this time, Measure A, I believe. It's not so much about tax reform, and there's more information that I need to pick up about that myself. And then lastly, it comes to economic justice and labor. We want accountability and workforce development. We want people to be living well and within their means. We want people to have living wages. As we see this late stage capitalism starting to plateau, we want people to be prepared. We want people to be safe. We want people to be comfortable. I mean, that's one of the large issues with the it's one of the looming topics of the Democratic Party. There is something that we've engendered since FDR, since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which is the Social Security safety net. Starting with him into the 1960s, the war on poverty probably could have been titled better, but here we are, with you'll have to forgive me, I got a little ahead of myself there. With our inflation rate going up, our poverty rate, our unemployment rate. These are things that we have to be leery of because this means that people are losing that kind of grip, and with that comes those looming disasters. So I don't have much more to say than that. Again, I, by way, am a community organizer, union organizer, and this is a bit more elocuting than I'm used to. And so I would want to ask if there are any questions from folks at this time, particularly about the party and how we operate locally. Well, I won, but...
How can people get involved?
Well, I mean, you're the registrar, right? You register them to vote. Yeah, we have a website, HumboldtDemocrats.org, HumboldtDemocrats.com. We also have our Facebook page, Humboldt Democrats. And so you can visit us there. We recently had some problems with our internet, so calling us directly isn't exactly the best. The email's been a little sketchy at worst, and so the best place is either social media. Yeah, it's probably social media at this point right now while we're working on those things.
How are you today?
I was just good. How are you doing?
Good. I was just wondering, where you feel like the local Democratic Party diverges from the state party, and would people still feel at home with the local Democratic Party organization if there are differences within that space. So how do we deal with those sort of, what we, big tent issues?
So the big tent issues, can you give me one or two that you might be thinking of?
I don't know, I was just wondering
okay.
if there were any, I was just wondering if there were issues about that.
Well, at the moment, there's only the one I can think of, and that would involve Israel and Palestine right now, and I'll just jump right into that. I can't speak for the party, but I can speak for myself, and that's, right now, we're working on a resolution condemning the actions of both Hamas and the overreaction of Palestine at the moment. So I think that's where we might diverge from the state party, I think that's where we might diverge from the national party. But beyond that, that would probably be a core issue right now, at least in this moment.
But just to,
yeah.
so what you're saying is you feel like the local Democratic Party is fairly aligned with the state Democratic Party? I mean, I just don't know, I was just wondering.
Barring some key issues, the aforementioned one,
Okay.
and then likely around some environmental issues. I know one of the issues that we had, I think it was early last year, where there was the potential of a train running through delivering
Cool.
thank you, yeah, remnants of coal, or coal tar, or whatever the toxic elements might be. That was a key issue for us here locally. That was an issue for us as the Democratic Party. I don't think the state had too much of a vested interest in that, to be honest.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. No, that's a good question, because there are gonna be those divergences, but we're still a party as a whole. That's one of those things where we're a big tent, just like I think a few other parties in here as well.
Yeah.
When I was a little girl, I heard stories from my father and mother about the war. My grandfather wrote some very derogatory things about the Nazis before Hitler came into power. And when he did, the SS came to my grandfather's home and shot his twin and took my grandfather to a concentration camp where he died. My father was smuggled out of the eastern Germany over the Iron Curtain, made it to Ellis Island and eventually to Alaska, and then to Seattle where he met my mother. So during my very early childhood, I heard stories from my dad and my mom about the war. I also noticed that my dad's teeth were coal black, and he had to have them all removed. And when he took his shirt off, he looked like a skeleton. He had what we called shell-shocked back then, now it's known as PTSD. And so I saw very tangible things that told me that there were wars in other countries, and that our country was very different. And I was a grateful child. I noticed that we could do things and say things and be things that you can't do in other countries even to this day. And it made me extremely grateful for my growing up when I would see other countries at war, when I would see other places where you had to cover your face, or you couldn't speak your mind, or you couldn't vote, or you needed medical, or I wouldn't even say medical, mutilation to be social. So I grew up grateful to be an American from the core of my being. And I didn't know a lot about politics until relatively later in life. And I remember when I first read the Constitution and realized that that was the front lines and the backbone of the beautiful rights that we have in this country. And I am an avid conservative, because to me a conservative is someone that conserves those principles. And those principles are what allow us to be Americans, very uniquely free in this day and age, and from the time our country was founded. It allows us to speak and dress and act and pursue our dreams in ways that other countries don't allow us. And I value that to the core of my being. We are also not a democracy, we're a republic. And, a republic is interested and based on the principles of individual liberty rather than universal equality. And that's something that I've seen be kind of blurred lately. And there are people that in my own life that I've met recently that didn't know what the difference between a democracy and a republic. So I wanted to just briefly tell my story so that I can show you, as a Republican, as a conservative, kind of where that all came from for me. And I'd like to hand over the rest of my time to Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Chris Coulomb, and I'm a candidate for the U.S. Congressional District 2. I'm running against Jared Huffman. One of the things that I think is worth discussing here is about the condition that we're facing here, particularly in Humboldt County, but along this entire 101 corridor. Some of the main points that brought me into politics after 16 years in the military, serving my time to make sure that we all had the rights, privileges afforded to us, all evenly and equally, through the Constitution itself. As I came home and I saw that what I left in 2000 was not the same as what I came back to in 2016. And as that condition has continued to unravel itself, we're seeing a great deal of economic distress and other issues that we're facing here on a daily basis, all the way from Humboldt County down to Sonoma County to Marin County. And one of those major issues is economics. One of the things that we can see empirically is that we have a declining economic condition not only in this corridor, but also in this state. And that's because we have people that need leadership, that are in positions of leadership that must lead us. And this is the authority through the Constitution that we grant to every single member of Congress. Congress doesn't have power because it's written on a piece of paper. Congress has power because we, the individuals, concede our power collectively to an individual itself. They are the representation, the manifestation of our individual rights. And these are the people, these are the ones that are supposed to lead our country with vision. And right now, I don't believe that we have that in this country. It doesn't have anything to do with party. It has to do with leadership. It has to do with people who have experienced the things that they need to experience to bring that knowledge into Congress. So I'm standing up, because I believe that we can choose a better future than we currently have. I served in the military, and my undergraduate and graduate degrees are both in politics and international relations. So I have a pretty well-rounded, I'll say, experience in the international arena, understanding what's happening geopolitically, and then also on a military front. I wrote my graduate degree on the South China Sea to make sure that I understood what was taking place. One of the things that we think that we can see is that there's a concerted effort against our country that has continued to bring us into war. We spent 20 years, many of my friends dying in the last 20 years to make sure that we effectuated democracy across the world. And now we come back here, we end this Afghan campaign, and immediately we're pulled into Ukraine. And now we're pulled into another conflict that I believe we all can see is going to get bigger before it gets smaller. And that conflict is going to require the United States to step up and provide leadership. Leadership that apparently we have not yet seen, and that the world is waiting for us to provide, if that is so to be. So I want to bring that knowledge both on the military side and as a small business owner to Congress, because I believe that all of us here would like to see a thriving economy. I think all of us here would like to make sure that the children of the future have opportunities for education, that they can reach the same level of comfort that we have been able to find so far. And so I know that this area doesn't always agree with the right, but I think we can all agree that things are not going well in this region and that we are all looking for something better. One of the things that I'd like to discuss before I close is that this party also represents small business specifically. And one of the main businesses, the main economic drivers here in Humboldt is the cannabis industry. As you mentioned, the HDRI Measure A is now going to be on the ballot. My comments are going to speak specifically for myself as a candidate, and they do not represent the party itself. But I'm of the opinion that the Republican Party is the party of small business. And according to the citizens of California, they believe that cannabis is a lawful activity, that it is licensed and it is taxed. And for that reason, I am in support of cannabis activity, as long as it is done legally, because this is what we are here to do. It is to build a commerce, build economy, create goods and services for everyone. And so for that, as of right now, the current reading of Measure A that I have I believe that as a Republican, I would go against Measure A and support what I believe to be are the small farmers of Humboldt County. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and
Does the Humboldt County Republican Party have a stance on the January 6th insurrection, and does the party diverge from what we are now seeing with the more extreme MAGA portion of the Republican Party?
At this time, we haven't taken a position on it.
Okay, thank you.
So first, I didn't mention Measure A.
okay.
That was me.
Okay, sorry. My fault.
I don't know how this keeps happening, Juan, I'm sorry.
It's the dude.
Second, how can people engage with the local Democrat or Republican Party?
Would you like to answer? Or?
Well, we have central committee meetings once a month on the first Tuesday of the month. You do have to be a registered Republican to attend the meeting. But we also have a website, HumboldtRepublicanParty.com. We're also on Facebook, Humboldt Republican Party. We have all that information in pamphlets and on business cards at our table. If you'd like to come out there, we can hand it out to you.
And we can shoot phone messages and emails.
And we do have an office that is open Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 1, 311 Broadway.
Hi, my name's Tani Sieber. I teach here in the politics department. I was really encouraged to hear you talk about education and the importance of investing in our future and our young people. So I was wondering if the Republican Party here has that as a part of its platform to increase funding and more support for our public education system.
Would you like to, I have part of an answer, but I have to.
I don't have much of an answer. When you talk of funding, we barely take care of ourselves. So that is a bigger picture in California. Humboldt Republican Party, I don't know how we could be that instrumental in supporting.
I'm wondering if it's part of your platform to increase funding for public education. It is?
Yeah.
Is that then different than the state party?
No, I think basically, education is extremely important in promoting good leadership, and that's what if you want to secure government, you have to vote in people that are educated and ready to lead. So education is a big part of that, absolutely.
I think we all can recognize, and there's some long dead person of Rome or Greece that made a comment along the lines that the educated youth is the foundation of society. And I think in principle that's the same thing that most political parties and individuals as a whole all recognize and accept as true. I think we need to do something where we make sure that teachers and those that work in the medical profession, that they can afford things. One of the bills that I would put forward when elected is to suspend the federal income tax on the first $182,000. And that would allow us to ensure, particularly for those that are in lower paying jobs, that they can afford to live without increasing government spending, without creating more government programs that would then require greater tax burdens, etc., greater inflation, so on and so on. But if we have the ability for citizens to actually keep the money that they earn, that will engender greater economic spending, or greater economic activity, greater local spending, which could then boost much of the local revenues, which could increase the tax revenues for the school districts, etc. These are big picture items that we need to get solved, because if we do not have another educated generation, it doesn't matter how much money we have. We need competent people who are going to take charge, and I think we need to make sure that the teachers have the ability to provide that knowledge to the next generation. So I don't have a very specific answer, but in principle, yes, we want to make sure that California returns to a place where it is absolutely the leader in education. Sir?
No, I just had a question that relates to something that Heidi said, that we're not a democracy, we're a republic, which means that we have liberty. So, can we both be a republic and a democracy? What does it mean to not be a democracy?
Well, so we are a constitutional republic that uses the democratic process to accomplish voting seats. So we are a constitutional republic as opposed to a monarchy or so on. And so what that means is that the minority can never be oppressed by the majority. So in a democracy, you can, as a majority group, vote to remove the rights of another party. In a republic, you cannot do that. That would be the key difference between the two government programs. And so that, I think, if anybody wants to add to that, it's a fair assessment. So that would be the key differentiation. There are protected rights to the minorities in a republic, whereas there are not in a democracy.
Revolutionary. And I say that explicitly for two reasons. Number one, because it's true. Because I think that we need to restructure this society. This society is fundamentally racist, it's fundamentally sexist, it's fundamentally class oppressive, and as if that's not bad enough, and I hope we can all agree that's terrible, literally these transnational corporations that really rule are destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself. Now, I am a revolutionary, and I say it for the second reason because I'm trying to actually normalize that conversation. Because it doesn't have to be something scary. It actually is about restructuring society. So I'm a revolutionary, but I'm a peaceful revolutionary. I believe it's possible to actually use the democratic process to exercise power over our economy, over our social systems, over like how we organize ourselves. Because I actually think that it's true that a very small percent, and not even the 1%, but the 0.01% are actually running everything. And for example, Chris, you and I agree on Measure A. I am opposed to Measure A. I suspect that if we actually had an opportunity to sit down as human beings and talk to one another, we would find a lot of agreement. We would find a lot of agreement around, and the way I say it is the U.S. is a democratic republic. The democratic is an adjective, the republic is the noun, but we almost never get an opportunity to do that, right? And it's because the ruling elite have got us arguing and fussing amongst ourselves while they're actually making decisions about how our society is supposed to operate. And I am an eco-socialist, and part of the reason that I wanted to literally, because I own it. Not only do I own it, I'm proud of it. And I believe that it is absolutely possible to create an economic system based on workers controlling the means of production. That it's actually possible for ordinary people to be able to govern their own society and govern their own selves. And the last thing that I'm going to do in my short amount of time is to share why this is something else that Chris and I agree on, and that is things are bad. And I'm going to give you my big picture assessment on why I think things are bad. I think it is because and fascism is rising. And here's why. Because we are living in the beginning of systems collapse. It is an ecological crisis. It's not coming, it's here and getting worse. Go to any of the natural resources department, any of the social sciences, and they'll be able, in this university, and they'll be able to give you a horrific explanation of how we are in overshoot. So we are in an ecological collapse that is accelerating. But wait, there's more. Mario actually described it well. He said we are in late stage capitalism. I'd say this, we're in end stage capitalism. You see, capitalism has as its way of organizing itself the private ownership of the means of production, that profit maximization is the reason that everything happens. Labor itself is just one more commodity that's bought and paid for, and that the market allocates it all. That's literally, that's the basic definition of capitalism. You put it all together, and with industrialization, it's why we are destroying Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself. So that's the existential crisis of capitalism, is that we're destroying the ecosystem. But there's another crisis of capitalism, and that is that capitalism has always depended upon the extraction of the surplus value of the labor of the worker in order for the capitalist to make profits. Here's the thing. With automation, technology, robotics, now artificial intelligence, workers are not needed. We are headed towards laborless production. And if we had a democratic control over the economy, eco-socialism, we would celebrate that. We would all have a lot of free time. We could engage in whatever it is that fully actualizes us. The problem is that they locked up the food. The problem is that a very small 0.01% controls almost everything, and because of the fact that we don't have economic democracy and the fact that capitalism is in its late stage, this is the reason that fascism is rising. Fascism is rising today for the same reasons that arose in the 1930s. Why? In the 1930s, the entire social political system was evolving from an agrarian society to an industrial society, right? And in that moment, there is chaos. Where is my place? How is the world going to be organized? Remember, fascism is not merely jackbooted thugs, right? It's not just cops killing people of color. I mean, that's racism, but it's not fascism. Fascism is a social, political, economic system. How to organize the world. So fascism is rising today because, whether we like it or not, we're in a revolutionary moment. Those of you who are young people are not going to live in the world that I grew up in. The society is going to be restructured. And so I am fighting, and the Green Party is fighting, to try to ensure that the principles and values of the Green Party become how society is organized. And I'll conclude it this way. The 4 values of the Green Party: ecology, a commitment and a recognition that all life is interconnected, and anything we do to the web of life we do to ourselves. 2, democracy, the idea that ordinary people can actually make the decisions that impact and affect their lives. The 3rd one is justice, the idea that things ought to be fair, and that we know that in a current society, between race and gender and economics, this system is not fair, and people feel it in their very bones because it is true. And then the 4th principle of the Green Party is a commitment to nonviolence. Because although I am a revolutionary, because I want to restructure society, I make a commitment to nonviolence as a way to effectuate that. So I'm going to use my democratic, constitutionally protected right to free speech to try to advocate for the world that I want to live in, and I encourage other people to do that as well. And the last thing that I want to say is, historically, look to the importance of alternative political parties. Because I'm going to give you a list of what it took alternative political parties to advocate for at the ballot box, that the 2-party system actually objected to. We'll start with the abolition of slavery. Women getting the right to vote. The creation of the Social Security Administration. Unemployment insurance. Workers' compensation laws. Pure food and drug laws. Ending child labor. The direct election of the United States Senate. For goodness sakes, the entire fabric of what we today would consider the bare damn minimum for a decent and just society, that fabric was woven together by so-called third parties. Third parties who did their work when they were called dangerous un-Americans. Third parties who did their work when they were called naive and unrealistic. And third party advocates who did their work when they were called spoilers. So if anything that I've said about restructuring society, peaceful revolution appeals to you, I want to encourage you to get with me and other peaceful revolutionaries in the Green Party who were committed to making this a different world. Peace. Same question, I bet. So the answer is HumboldtGreens.org or on our social media sites. And the question that I have anticipated from our clerk is, how do you get involved with the Green Party? Yes?
So you've been quoted as calling yourself an anarcho-communist. Do you see those principles as part of the Green Party platform? And do you, as a proud capitalist myself, who comes from the working class, both my grandparents, both sets of grandparents crossed the border, Rio Grande, they worked in the fields their whole lives, and to give me the opportunities that I have in life right now. And I'm able to be my own boss, I'm able to enjoy the fruits of capitalism, which I disagree with you, they're not in their end stages. And the alternative that you've offered, which you being the co-coordinator of the solidarity economy, that economy came from an anarchist viewpoint and from an anarchist in Spain. So carrying on these ideas of a solidarity economy to replace the free market economy, I'm curious if you see that as anti-democratic.
It is not anti-democratic. That's an easy question.
That's easy. Thank you.
Are not experiencing end stage capitalism. What we're experiencing is cronyism. What we have is a corporate oligarchy that is masquerading as a democratic republic. And though we have these democratic institutions, though we have democratically elected representatives, what we end up finding is that corporate lobbyists end up having more power over what happens at higher levels of government. And so the Libertarian Party's goal is to decentralize that power, to bring it down to the people. We are not fiscally conservative, socially liberal. We're the party of fiscally it is your money and socially it is your business. We want government out of your bank. We want government out of your bedroom. We want government out of your life as much as possible, down to those very minimal roles that they should occupy, such as national defense. I was active duty in the military for 6 years, and then I did 6 years in the California Air National Guard. I've seen firsthand the effects of our nation-building policies. I've seen firsthand what big government looks like. It's terrible. Our policies have been creating chaos and strife the world over. And they do it in everybody's everyday lives as well, in the small ways. We end up with racist and classist laws. Gun control is a big tenet of the Libertarian Party. It started out as a way to control racial minorities from being able to defend themselves against various groups. We believe that armed minorities are harder to oppress, and that the individual is the smallest minority. That every person has a right to defend themselves and has a right to be able to decide what looks best for them. You talk about how we get down to this atomistic level of anarchy, where it's individual rule over each individual person. Anarchism at its core is no other ruler but self. And you can voluntarily opt into whatever social program you want to. Anarcho-communism can exist all on its own. You can have communities of people that are living and thriving together, that are communally sharing their own means of production. In a libertarian society, you can have all of these things that you want based on free association. But policies enacted by local, state, and federal governments prevent you from being able to have that freedom, that ability to choose where you want to go, when you want to go. We experienced it most acutely during the lockdowns, where you were told you couldn't cross certain city lines or county lines. I had firsthand experience walking into, just trying to get something to eat at a Denny's down in Los Angeles. I was there for a convention. And I walk in, and they go, "Can I see your COVID vaccination card?" I go, "What? I'm just here to eat." They said, "No, but we need to verify so that way we can seat you masked to your table where you can then take off your mask, and then you can eat, and then get up." I said, "No, I'm good." And I went literally 2 blocks away into Orange County to a Denny's that I could see, and walked in, and they said, "Pick any place you like, sit down, go ahead." That is local governments making the right choices for their people. People freely being able to associate and say, "You know what, I want to put my business somewhere else. I want to put my money somewhere else." We don't experience free market capitalism. You cannot look at all of the regulations that are currently in place that prevent people from being able to work and say that we are in free market capitalism. I've been homeless twice. Having the ability to have any source of income was impossible because there was a minimum wage set. And the jobs that were available, I could do them, but not for that wage. And so I was prevented from even earning a small way through this life. It was through tremendous blessing, being able to associate with different people, that I was able to get from my car into a home. And now I've got 4 kids, a wife, and I'm living my American dream because I chose to exchange my time for money. That is capitalism. The voluntary exchange of services, effort, for money. Now, what government has done to our money has been terrible. You've been experiencing the effects of inflation most acutely at the register. Everything costs more because government has destroyed your money. The federal government has destroyed your effort. Inflation is just an invisible tax, wherein they just print money and pay for the things that they want to fund anyways. And every day, your dollar buys less and less. We want to get away from that. We want to have sound financial and fiscal policy. The Libertarian Party focuses on things at a local level because we feel that you make the best decisions for your life, not DC, not Sacramento. We want the local politics to decide where things go. That's what I look at when I come from the perspective of being an anarcho-capitalist, is that I want people to be in charge of their own lives in as many ways as possible. So when it comes to the Libertarian Party of Humboldt County, what have we been doing? We've been getting actively engaged using guerrilla service. We don't set up our own events to go and do beach cleanups. We jump in with other people who are already conducting those efforts. We don't sit here and try and make up our own thing and go, well, this is us, we get all the credit. We go, no, this is a community effort. We embed in the community and we lift where we stand, because that's how we actually make progress in our community, is by individually making that effort. We don't grow as a nation by electing our guy into the right seat. We grow as a nation as each of us takes accountability for our individual lives and chooses what that looks like, to choose where that effort goes. I want to empower you to have those choices by decentralizing that authority from the federal government down to the states, and from the states down to the counties down to the cities, and down to you as the individual. We are a party of choice, where all of the things that you value and hold true, you can have. Because the Libertarian Party believes that you are the best arbiter of the decisions for your life. We've been working with decriminalized nature. It was referenced earlier about the deprioritization of psilocybin ethnogens. We worked with them to be able to hold roundtables, collect signatures, and one of the questions that was brought up was, well, there's a measure already coming in 2025. Why don't we just wait for the entire state to vote on this measure that'll decriminalize ethnogens for California? There was a bit of rumblings, nobody really had an answer, and I finally spoke up and I said, because it's not up to them. We know what's right for our community. We know what's right for us. We should not wait for Sacramento or the entire state to tell us what's right for our community. And that's what the Libertarian Party wants. We want you to be empowered at as low a level as possible to make those decisions over your life. So I've told you about what we're doing, who I am, a little bit of my background, and I'm going to leave all of this debate, all these questions, for up there, because we've already spent enough time asking questions that could have been being asked in the Golden Room, right? Correct?
That is correct.
So I appreciate your time, and so all your questions you can direct towards me up there, or anybody else. If you want to get involved, lphumboldt.com just went live today. I've been working on that in my off time to try and get that up and running, because again, we think that you're the best arbiter of what is right for you in your life. All of your rights, all the time.
Can you repeat
What's up, Roy?
Can you repeat that website?
lphumboldt.com.
Perfect.
In fact, if you have a